LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the January 6th edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mix-Up. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining me and Chong the cat here, who does not like to be held for this long, so I will be putting him down. And now I'll be using the 11 best, most newsworthy clips I picked out from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be a really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all today. Since it's January 6th, and we've seen the losing presidential candidate for the Democrats, Vice President Kamala Harris, has certified the election of her opponent Donald Trump in the January 6th process. Today, that all happened. And does that mean democracy's back on track? Well, it doesn't work if only one side admits when they lose. Like, if Republicans, or at least Republican presidential candidates, aren't going to admit when they lose anymore, if you're not, well, I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of losing Republicans who admitted that they lost, but there's a big unresolved conflict over the whole January 6th issue, and that's really a question I wish they'd asked on the Sunday shows. They did ask some questions about January 6th, about the pardons, about, what we've learned, and I'm and then there's the final clip I'm going to show you, clip 11. If you're following down on the clip list, down in the video description, I have short summaries of all 11 clips, the source of all the clips. Clip 11 is kind of a reverse cross-examination where the Democratic guest kind of schools the Fox News Sunday host or guest host Jacqui Heinrich. So you can stay tuned all the way to clip 11 if you want to see that. But I almost used that as my political comedy clip, but then I saw, not on topic, not on my main topic of can democracy survive when only Democrats admit losing elections, but this was about Donald Trump's other breaking of so many traditions of our democracy by getting convicted of 34 felonies, and by convicted by a jury of his peers. The sentencing is going to be set for this Friday, and they were discussing that on America's Newsroom, on Fox News, a supposedly straight news program, and their supposedly straight news anchor, Bill Hemmer, asked one of the dumbest questions, especially for someone who's supposed to be informed about, how our government works, I would think, which I'll talk about a little more after we watch that brief clip together over here.
Trump also said in his statement that Alvin Bragg, who's the DA in New York, did not want to bring the case, but the judge went forward anyway. Merchan works for Bragg, doesn't he?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a lawyer, so maybe it seems stupider to me but I assume most of my viewers know that in a criminal court, the judge does not work for the prosecutor, the district attorney. I mean, all you have to do is watch some episodes of Law and Order to know that, right? I mean, and it's actually kind of astounding to me that Bill Hemmer, after covering so many court cases and supposedly knowing what the three branches of the government are, the prosecutor is the executive branch and the judge is the judicial branch, and the judge does not work for the prosecutor. I've heard some people refer to Bill Hemmer as a himbo. That's like the male version of a bimbo, I guess. It's sexist either way, or I don't know. You let me know. Is Bill Hemmer a himbo? Is himbo a politically incorrect term? But anyway, I thought that was really stupid, and I would start the show with that, although there's a really stupid retort from Jacqui Heinrich all the way on clip 11 if you stay tuned all the way through. But now I'm going to get to the news summaries from longest to shortest, and the longest one actually is Fox News Sunday. Guest host Jacqui Heinrich has breaking news. There's a storm in winter. I don't know why that's always like breaking news. And then they also discuss briefly the New Orleans attack on the Bourbon Street, the person who drove a truck into people, killed a bunch of people in New Orleans. That actually was a big topic of the next news summary. And they mentioned January 6th, but not the part that really matters, I guess. And after Jacqui Heinrich does her introduction, they have two different reporters, Lucas Tomlinson with Biden and Nate Foy with Trump in the news summary. And the bias of the news summary I will discuss with you after we watch it together. Over here.
And hello from Fox News in Washington. A look at the headlines. Millions of Americans are dealing with a major winter storm moving across the Midwest right now along the Interstate 70 corridor. It's heading for the mid-Atlantic states, bringing heavy snow and blistering cold temperatures overnight tonight. Several states have declared states of emergency. Here in Washington, Congress says it will still convene despite the storm. A congressional joint session will count the 2024 presidential electoral votes, and then Vice President Kamala Harris will certify her own loss to Donald Trump. Congress tightened and clarified the rules for that procedure after the events of January 6, 2021. While that's going on, President Biden and the First Lady will visit New Orleans 4 days after an ISIS-inspired terrorist plowed a rented truck into pedestrians early on New Year's Day, killing 14 and injuring dozens more. In a moment, we'll get reaction from Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. But first, we have team coverage with Nate Foy covering the Trump transition from West Palm Beach and Lucas Tomlinson covering the White House response to the terror attack. Lucas, let's start with you.
Jacqui, President Biden and the First Lady will travel down to New Orleans tomorrow. In his 15 days remaining in office, Biden has pledged to keep up pressure on terrorist groups.
We're going to continue to relentlessly pursue ISIS and other terrorist organizations where they are, and they'll find no safe harbor here.
After the ISIS-inspired rampage on Bourbon Street that killed 14 people and wounded dozens more, critics say Biden for years downplayed the threat posed by Islamic terrorism.
According to the intelligence community, terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, white supremacists.
Poison has for too long haunted this nation. What is that poison? White supremacy. Throughout our history, has ripped this nation apart.
It's not clear if Biden has changed his mind.
Thank you, everybody. Does the president still consider white supremacy the greatest terrorist threat to the United States?
Hours into the new year, the FBI says 42-year-old U.S. Army veteran Shamsuddin Jabbar plowed his rented pickup truck with an ISIS flag attached through Bourbon Street before being shot by police. Prior to the massacre, Jabbar placed 2 bombs in ice chests along the route. On his way to New Orleans from Houston, where he lived, Jabbar recorded a message to his family saying he joined ISIS earlier this year. He divorced for the 3rd time in 2022. Louisiana's Attorney General says New Orleans must bolster security before hosting the Super Bowl next month.
The city is going to have to be answering a lot of hard questions while it also gets ready for a Super Bowl.
Security has been beefed up around the White House ahead of Jimmy Carter's state funeral and President-elect Trump's inauguration. A second layer of fencing has just been added to Pennsylvania Avenue this weekend. Jacqui?
Lucas Tomlinson at the White House. Thank you, Lucas. Now to West Palm Beach and Nate Foy covering the Trump transition. Nate.
Hey, Jacqui. President-elect Donald Trump hosted Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni at Mar-a-Lago last night alongside his pick for Secretary of State, Senator Marco Rubio. And with just over 2 weeks until Inauguration Day, the president-elect is already working to ensure the leadership apparatus that he wants is in place in Washington, D.C., and ready to implement his agenda.
In coordination with President Trump and his administration, we are going to create a leaner, faster, and more efficient federal workforce.
House Speaker Mike Johnson won re-election Friday after President-elect Donald Trump made phone calls on his behalf while golfing in West Palm Beach.
President Trump was hitting a 5-iron about the time we talked. We had a very good discussion about how to advance the Trump agenda.
Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "Mike will be a great speaker, and our country will be the beneficiary." Trump warns of looming Democratic attempts to block his cabinet picks. Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth will face the Senate Armed Services Committee on January 14th.
While Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, will meet tomorrow with Senator Mark Warner, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee.
I think we have great nominees. We're doing very well, as you know. I think most of them are being thought of very highly, just about all of them. So I think we're going to do very well.
Incoming National Security Advisor Mike Waltz says it's important to get Trump's cabinet picks confirmed, calling the presidential transition a moment of vulnerability. The terror attack in New Orleans raises additional concerns. Trump blames President Joe Biden for rising radical Islamic terrorism and violent crime in the country. In New York, Judge Juan Merchan indicates Trump will avoid prison time at his upcoming sentencing on Friday.
We are going to be, excuse me.
Trump disputed his criminal conviction on Truth Social, writing, quote, "I never falsified business records. It is a fake, made-up charge by a corrupt judge."
Trump can attend his sentencing virtually or in person. He has not said which one he will pick quite yet. His team is looking forward to what they're calling a victory rally at Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C., which holds 20,000 people. It's going to happen on the eve of the inauguration on January 19th. The next day, Trump will be sworn into the White House for a second term. Jacqui?
All right, Nate Foy reporting from West Palm Beach. Thank you, Nate. Joining us now is Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy.
So yeah, you saw Jacqui Heinrich did mention that they had changed they'd done the Electoral Count Reform Act, changing the original Electoral Count Act because of the events of January 20th, 4 years ago. And they didn't really say what those events were. And they talked about Mike Johnson becoming Speaker of the House after phone calls from Trump, but not about how there were holdouts and they held open the vote for hours. I don't know who watched that this week. That kind of took away some of the suspense I was hoping for today, January 6th. I thought maybe if they didn't have a Speaker of the House, it might create some drama, but there really wasn't much drama from January 6th. And then you saw, as usual, they talked about problems with Trump's nominees, some were like opposition to some of his nominees, and but never really said, they don't even really talk about them being controversial anymore. There's just Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, and they didn't even mention Kash Patel, but several of them may have problems. I guess we'll see. But I want to contrast that with the next news summary. ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos really went heavy in on the New Orleans terrorist attack and the heightened state of security. They didn't focus as much on all the times Trump said that the worst threat, domestic terror threat, was white supremacy. That is like a Fox News talking point. I forgot to mention from their news summary that that's actually backed up by numbers. But I'm going to move on to the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary. George Stephanopoulos and Pierre Thomas here talking about mainly the heightened terror threat alert in New Orleans, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch together over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. In the wake of the New Year's Day terror attack in New Orleans, security officials across the country are on high alert for a series of high-profile events now feared to be targets. The Golden Globes in L.A. tonight. The certification of the 2024 election at the Capitol tomorrow. Jimmy Carter's state funeral in Washington later this week, followed by Donald Trump's inauguration on January 20th, and the Super Bowl back in New Orleans on February 9th. Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas starts us off with what security experts are calling the most dangerous threat environment since 9/11.
Within days of the eruption of violence in Israel stemming from Hamas's horrific October 7th, 2023 terror attack, FBI and Homeland Security officials worried that homegrown radicals could be energized. The concern that violence, even a world away, could beget violence here at home, and that radicals of many different ideologies would seek opportunities to use low-tech weapons that would be deadly efficient.
We're in a unique moment, and the current conflict is contributing to that.
This joint intelligence bulletin from October 19, 2023, flatly states that in response to the Middle East conflict, radicals here in the U.S. likely would employ unsophisticated tactics, among them firearms, knives, and vehicle ramming attacks due to easy weapon access. Intelligence analysts say by January, ISIS sought to capitalize on the violence in Israel, one of its leaders issuing an audio recording calling on supporters and sympathizers to kill Christian and Jewish targets wherever you find them. Sources telling ABC News that ISIS' call to action stoked an already volatile threat environment, perhaps the most dangerous since 9/11.
I would be hard-pressed to think of a time where so many threats to our public safety and national security were so elevated all at once.
And we would soon see hard evidence of a resurgent ISIS still with influence inside the U.S. On April 8th, the FBI arrested this 18-year-old Idaho man seen here with a knife and ISIS flag, accusing him of planning to commit mass murder at a series of local churches. In October, the FBI charged an Oklahoma City man and a juvenile with plotting an Election Day massacre in the name of ISIS.
We have been warning for quite some time now that we are in a heightened threat environment from malign foreign actors, including in particular ISIS.
In the early hours of New Year's Day, all the fears about ISIS and the use of low-tech weapons, including vehicles, unfolding in New Orleans. 14 victims brutally murdered, run over by this pickup truck driven by an alleged ISIS sympathizer who died in a hail of gunfire in a shootout with police. The FBI says he was armed to the teeth with an assault rifle, handgun, and pipe bombs that he hoped to detonate remotely. The anticipated nightmare fully realized.
The main focus of the investigation right now, trying to figure out if the suspect was radicalized on his own or if someone from ISIS directed him in any way. ISIS and other terror groups, including white supremacists, look for events or circumstances to capitalize on, like the Middle East conflict. They push out so much hate material on social media, and trying to figure out who is simply consuming the information and who might turn terrorists plotting to kill, that's the challenge, George.
And Pierre, you've been reporting more on what we saw from those Facebook posts of the killer.
Indeed, George. We were able to review yesterday some information, and the source walked us through what he posted. It's truly chilling. He's so calm, talking about possibly trying to kill his family, and that he was en route to New Orleans. And it was very clear that he was just cold-blooded in his desire to kill many, many people, George.
Okay, Pierre, we just saw John Cohen there, our Homeland Security expert, as well. John, veteran of the Homeland Security Department. Thank you for joining us as well. And John.
So yeah, there is the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary that really focused in on terror threat. I don't know. It seemed to me overly focused. They've the ABC's This Week has definitely had a penchant for reporting strongly on the views of the military-industrial complex, especially Martha Raddatz, as I've talked about many times over the 12 years I've been covering these Sunday shows and weekly live streams. But I don't know. Maybe that threat is real and it's not just propaganda to save the defense budget, or maybe there will be increasing numbers of attacks and they're giving us fair warning. But in my opinion, it seems more like hype than I mean, I hate to be I would hate to be wrong, but I don't think necessarily that type of coverage really helps. It in some ways it does the work of terrorism to, terrify people, to make people afraid. And I saw a lot of people talking about how, like, everywhere you go or on cable news after this New Orleans attack, I saw several different people talk about how you need to have situational awareness everywhere you go. You always have to know where the exit is. And I don't know, that seems almost like that's what the point of terrorism is, to make people feel that way. And anyway, you can let me know what you think in the comment sections. I haven't seen a lot of live comments yet during this live stream, but now I'm going to go to the third longest news summary. It's actually significantly shorter, just a couple minutes long. NBC News Meet the Press. Kristen Welker just briefly touching on three different topics, if I recall. It's Yeah, the New Year's attack in New Orleans and Las Vegas, and then Mike Johnson becoming Speaker of the House narrowly with a little more context than the much longer Fox News Sunday news summary on it over in this clip.
Good Sunday morning. On this first weekend of 2025, the nation is on edge after deadly New Year's attacks in New Orleans and Las Vegas. Federal officials are on high alert about potential security threats as Washington prepares for a series of key public events, the certification of the 2024 election on Monday, President Jimmy Carter's state funeral on Thursday at the National Cathedral, and in just 15 days, President-elect Trump's inauguration. President Biden with an emotional message to the victims' families of that tragedy in Louisiana.
To all the families of those who are killed, to all those who are injured, to all the people of New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know, I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you. We're going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal.
Now, according to the FBI, the New Orleans attacker, a U.S. citizen and Army veteran from Texas who was inspired by ISIS to kill 14 people, had planned to use a transmitter to detonate 2 explosives he had placed near the site of the Bourbon Street attack. Top law enforcement officials have warned the ongoing war in the Middle East has increased the threat of terror attacks inside the United States.
At a time when the terrorism threat was already elevated, the ongoing war in the Middle East has raised the threat of an attack against Americans inside the United States to a whole nother level.
We have been warning for quite some time now, both the Justice Department, the FBI, and the intelligence community, that we are in a heightened threat environment from malign foreign actors, including, in particular, ISIS.
All of this comes as the 119th Congress convened on Friday, narrowly re-electing House Speaker Mike Johnson to lead the razor-thin Republican majority after he and President-elect Trump persuaded several initial holdouts. I sat down with the first new Senate Republican leader in 18 years, Majority Leader John Thune. Senate Majority Leader Thune.
And I will have a clip of John Thune. That's clip 10 if you're following along down in the video description on my clip list. I don't know. That news summary was much briefer, fairly balanced, I guess, compared to Fox News, but also a heavy emphasis on the threat level. You know, some of the clips they're showing go all the way back. There was a clip from April there that they were showing about the threat level, and then October, and as a result of the war in Gaza and what's going on with Hezbollah and Lebanon and Iran, and I don't know, maybe there is a raised threat level. I guess we will see. Here, the next news summary is even shorter, a little under 90 seconds. CNN State of the Union. Jake Tapper over here.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, D.C., where the State of our Union is starting anew. There are 15 days left before the peaceful transfer of power, hopefully, between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And as Biden wraps up his 4 years in office, Trump is ramping up his preparations to return to office, along with some of his national security nominees. Trump met last night with Italy's prime minister at Mar-a-Lago in Florida, just before Biden's official visit to Italy this week. Trump also strategized with House Speaker Mike Johnson about how to get his priorities on the border, energy, and tax cuts passed through Congress this spring. The president-elect wants one giant reconciliation package, which would require only 51 instead of 60 Senate votes. More on that coming up. But first, tomorrow, 4 years after the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol, Congress will again convene on January 6th to certify Trump's return to the White House. The proceedings will be led by Trump's 2024 opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, as Washington bolsters security ahead of the event, though a repeat of the violence of 4 years ago does not, thankfully, seem imminent. Tomorrow's certification, a remarkable turnaround for Trump, who was widely condemned by even some of his strongest supporters 4 years ago this week for his role in the attack. And Mr. Trump is now promising to pardon many of those convicted of crimes committed 4 years ago on January 6th as soon as he takes office. Joining us now to discuss, Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota.
And I will have a clip of Amy Klobuchar coming up fairly soon, or that's clip 9. But I thought that was the best news summary for my topic anyway, and actually showed pictures of January 6th and discussed the crimes of January 6th, given that this was the Sunday news program on January 5th, talking about what was going to happen and what had happened. So, yeah, I think that was probably the best of the news summaries. And then CBS News Face the Nation just had like a vague statement about, well, let's watch that final news summary. It's only 19 seconds over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. As we begin the new year, the first few days of January are already proving and providing enormous challenges, both here in Washington and around the country, especially in terms of security. We begin today with House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner and Ranking Member Jim Himes.
So, they had bipartisan members of the House talking about security threats at the beginning of Face the Nation, I guess because of the New Orleans attack, and they didn't discuss the issues of January 6th or the issues of the strength or weakness of American democracy that I think, based on, the way I'm looking at the news this week, that is one of the big questions. And didn't really ask Jim Himes or Mike Turner about that. You'll see later, Margaret Brennan did discuss it with Nancy Pelosi, and I'll have a clip of that. That's actually the clip after next. ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. They did not discuss the January 6th issues really with any of the newsmaker guests they had on, only in the panel discussion, only like 45 minutes into the program, although they did have one guest on from the New York Times who gave some details of how we got here in terms of Republican mythology, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that brief clip from the ABC panel discussion yesterday together over here.
First orders of business, the former President Trump has promised, of course, is pardoning the January 6 rioters. Tomorrow, the anniversary of the January 6 riots, the news certification. We talked about the security threat, Astead Herndon, but in your paper this morning, New York Times, great chronicling of the remarkable transformation of the view of January 6 created by President Trump.
Absolutely. And this has been a Republican effort that started in the weeks after the January 6th attack. I remember writing a story January 17th, just 11 days after the attack, about how Republicans were warping the language around the January 6th and tying a different narrative. I was outside the federal prison where January 6 prisoners were the day that Trump was indicted himself. And they knew at that time that him getting elected meant they had an opportunity to be pardoned. This has been the thing that Trump talks about as his rallies. And for the most fervent part of his base, they are fully engulfed in a warped language that has completely misrepresented the type of actions we saw on that day. They have turned it from something that was a shameful act that was kind of universally condemned on that day to being something they actually rally around. And it speaks to, I think, the misinformation ecosystem that's taken root among a bunch of people.
So, yeah, there has been a real warping of perception. I see it on Fox News all the time, especially in the opinion shows. They downplay the seriousness of what happened 4 years ago today, January 6, 2021, with the attack on the Capitol, the attempt to subvert the outcome of the election, criminal, thousands of people charged with crimes, and now Trump is going to pardon them, and it raises some real issues about our democracy as well that Margaret Brennan brings up with Nancy Pelosi in this next clip. Or have people forgotten what actually happened on January 6th? And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Tomorrow marks 4 years since the attack on the U.S. Capitol, and we spoke to then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi just a short while ago this morning. She's recovering from a fall last month, and we began by asking her why she thinks so many Americans decided that Donald Trump's support for the rioters in 2020 should not disqualify him from a second term as president.
I wouldn't say that the American people disregarded this. They just had a different view as to what was in their interest economically and the rest. So I don't call this a disregard of January 6th. I just call it something that they saw in their interest economically.
But I mean, even just last night at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump was screening a documentary about the 2020 election, claiming his win and trying to talk about the legal challenges he had. There seems to be a continued effort to claim that he won in 2020.
It's really sad. It really is sad. And I don't know about the film that he had and the rest, but it's almost sick that he would be thinking that in 2020. He's won the election now. Mm-hmm. That will be clear. That will be clear. And tomorrow he will be clearly, we will be accepting the results of the Electoral College. So he should be triumphant about that. But to be still trying to fight a fight that he knows he lost is really sad.
You know, the president-elect has said that in the first 9 minutes of his new term, he will pardon many of those who participated in January 6th. He said he'll look at it a case-by-case basis. But in looking back at what happened 4 years ago, there are recordings, there's video evidence of what happened. It is personal for you. Some of these writers in your office chanting your name. Yeah. One of the defendants, we were looking for Nancy to shoot her in the friggin' brain, but we didn't find her. For you, this is personal. So when you hear about pardons, do you think the nonviolent attackers deserve to be pardoned?
The nonviolent, I think that's a violent attacker with the intention.
The violence itself.
Yeah.
The violent language, you think? The
violent language, yes, the intention. And, of course, the intention to attack the Vice President of the United States. Now, it didn't end that day. As you know, he called out to these people to continue their violence. My husband being a victim of all of that. And he still has injuries from that attack, so it just goes on and on. It isn't something that happens and then it's over. No, once you are attacked, you have consequences that continue. So it's really a strange person who's going to be president of the United States who thinks that it's okay to pardon people who are engaged in an attack. But let's do this. Let's just say, okay, to the American people, this is what this is about. Do not be conned by the denial of the election of 2020. And why would he be saying that? Mm-hmm. But he is. And then on top of that, the denial of what happened on January 6th.
But
so I don't know. I mean, I think that some of that discussion went in the wrong direction. I mean, they did talk about the election denialism, but more in terms of the effect of the pardons and what does it say and how it personally affects Nancy Pelosi without really talking like how does it affect our democracy when only one side is willing to admit when they lose elections. That, I mean, January 6th probably would have been a lot different if Kamala Harris had won the had won those 7 swing states, or if there'd been a close election, or somehow I don't think Donald Trump would have conceded. I guess it's a counterfactual argument. I normally don't like those because I guess we'll never know how Donald Trump would have reacted if he'd lost the election, but I don't know. Seems pretty clear to me. You can let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm going to switch the next 2 clips from their order down in the clip list, just because I wanted to, I think this one goes better with the last clip, and then Amy Klobuchar goes better with the Adam Smith clip, because this next clip I'm going to show you, clip 10, even though I just showed you clip 8, is Senate Majority Leader John Thune responding to questioning from Kristen Welker on NBC News' Meet the Press about the propriety of pardoning people who engaged in violent acts 4 years ago on January 6th, and it see contrast it to what Representative Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi said in the previous clip over here.
Monday marks 4 years since January 6th, since the attack on the Capitol. You were here that day. You've been in this building for more than 20 years. In my interview with him, President-elect Trump said he plans to pardon those who attacked the Capitol on that day, and potentially even some of those who pleaded guilty to assaulting police officers. Do you support that, pardoning people who attacked police officers who stormed the Capitol that day?
Well, I mean, as we've discovered under the Biden administration, the pardon authority is a very broad one. I mean, he's taken it to a whole new level. That's ultimately going to be a decision that President Trump is going to have to make. And, you know, what I'm focused on is the future, and not looking in the rearview mirror, but looking at the windshield and what we have to do. I think you learn from the past, you remember the past, but you live in the present and the future. And right now, we have an agenda which consists of a stronger, more robust economy, energy dominance, rebuilding our national security and securing our border. Those are things that we want to get done, which I think the American people voted on in November and gave President Trump a very decisive victory. And I think the expectation is that we're going to work with him to accomplish that agenda.
As the majority leader in the Senate, though, what message do you think it would send to give pardons to people who pleaded guilty to attacking police officers who stormed this building 4 years ago?
Well, look, I mean, again, it's ultimately going to be a decision that the President of the United States, the pardon authority exists with him. My job right now is to help the President get the people into the positions that he wants to implement his agenda, and then work constructively with him, with the House of Representatives, on an agenda that we think is what the American people voted for. And that, you know, you can't be looking in the rearview mirror to do that. You know, that's 4 years ago. I think the American people are living in the present, and I think they want the work that we're doing to be done with an eye toward what we can do and improve their lives today.
President-elect Trump told me he is open to doing a deal with Democrats to protect dreamers.
So yeah, I just kept that playing so you can see that's all the follow-up from Kristen Welker. No follow-up to that comment from John Thune that Biden had taken the pardons to a whole new level, which I guess is a oblique reference to pardoning his son, Hunter Biden. But what about Trump, who pardoned, Roger Stone and Steve Bannon, who were involved in like misdeeds with him? Roger Stone was like the go-between between the Trump campaign and WikiLeaks on the timing of Roger Stone was pardoned to like cover up Russia collusion, the whole Russia hoax. Well, Roger Stone was convicted for lying about there actually being collusion between Russia and, well, whatever. I don't want to go off on the whole Russia collusion rant again. It doesn't really matter at this point anymore, but I would say Trump pardon people in a much more venal way than anything Biden has done. The pardon of Hunter Biden, I don't think even compares. But if you disagree, you can let me know in the comment section. And I'm now going to go back to the Amy Klobuchar clip, which is actually the one where Jake Tapper asks her if she thinks people are forgetting what happened on January 6th. But then there's a follow-up here that I wanted to juxtapose to what's in the Fox News Sunday clip, the final newsmaker clip that comes after this, about there's this false equivalency drawn between a few Democrats who in previous elections objected on January 6th, and you have to have a senator to do it. It has to be a member of the House and a member of the Senate. Actually now, well, Amy Klobuchar is actually going to explain how they made it even harder for people to object after January 6, 2021. And I don't think what Democrats have done in the past with like some members of the House, you'll see a clip of Maxine Waters objecting to, I think 26, or was it in 2000? Yeah, I think after Al Gore conceded, which is the whole point, like Al Gore conceded and Hillary Clinton conceded the election the next morning after the 2016 election. Kamala Harris conceded the election to Trump, just certified his results. The Democrats accept when they lose elections, even in 2000 when the Supreme Court basically in a 5-4 decision handed the presidency to George W. Bush in a way that was kind of political politics masquerading as a legal decision. But anyway, I'll get to the Amy Klobuchar clip here, and we can talk about that a little more after we watch it together here.
2022, CNN did a special 1 year after the attack, and you and I talked about your memories of January 6th. Let's roll a little bit of that.
One really smart staff person yells out, works for the parliamentarian, says, "Get the boxes, get the boxes." And it is very clear now, as they invaded the Senate chamber, that they would have taken them out, that they would have most likely burned them, and they would have gotten rid of the electoral ballots. I think it's important we never forget, and that's why I thought it was important to take you down this hallway.
I forgot that we were wearing COVID masks. Are you worried that January 6th, the horrible things that happened that day, are being forgotten?
No, I think that when you look at the work of the January 6th committee, and I support that work, the work that came out of the House of Representatives, they established for the historical record what happened. Putting aside the fact that a lot of people had reasons that they voted the way they did, people still care about their democracy. I was just watching one of your panels. 4 out of 5 people in the last election felt that Donald Trump had done something wrong. He did. He did. He led an insurrection. But the people have now voted, and our job tomorrow, which is also January 6th, is to implement the will of the people. It's the peaceful transition of power. So Democrats and Republicans will come together tomorrow to certify those results, to make that same walk with the young women with those mahogany boxes filled with the ballots. That's what we do. That's what America has done. And that's what we will do on the inauguration day.
As one of her last official acts as vice president, Kamala Harris tomorrow will be certifying her own election loss. In 2001, when Vice President Al Gore did a similar thing, there was an objection. Take a look.
Declaration of the persons elected.
Mr. Vice President, I rise to object to the fraudulent 25 Florida electoral votes.
Are any Democrats going to object tomorrow, do you think?
Not that I know of, but of course the process allows for these objections. If it happens, they're heard out. The vice president rules on them. But under our new law that we passed, you have to have 20% of the bodies of Congress to support those objections before you can have an extended debate, because that's what was used as a trigger, as you know, last January 6th to slow down the process, and then, of course, ultimately seen by the insurrectionists as a way they could derail the will of the American people.
So in light of the New Orleans terrorist attack, Trump allies are...
So yeah, there you see Amy Klobuchar explain the changes, and even though there have been a couple cases of Democrats objecting, members of the House objecting, there was never anyone in the Senate which under the old rules required House and Senate. It wasn't until 4 years ago, January 6, 2021, that the House and Senate got together to actually try to stop the certification of the results of the election. And the final newsmaker clip I want to show you now is the Fox News Sunday interview. This is what I said was like a reverse cross-examination where the guest kind of schools the host asking the questions. And this is Representative Adam Smith. I think I showed him doing this on Fox News once before on a different topic. I think it was whether the Biden administration gave billions of dollars to Iran. I think that was the topic. And I referred to it as that the Fox News host was getting slapped by Adam Smith's invisible hand, which is, if you're a fan of Adam Smith, the author Wealth of Nations, you know what the invisible hand is. That's my economics joke for the night. But the the comeback or the attempt to come back from being reverse cross-examined by Jacqui Heinrich is like classically bad. Almost used the end of this clip as my political comedy, and so it's kind of starting and ending with political comedy this week. Well, there'll be a bonus Cheech and Chong the kittens clip at the end, but here's the final newsmaker clip. Adam Smith getting the best of Fox News' Jacqui Heinrich over trying to do that whole false equivalency on election deniers over here.
The new Congress has been sworn in. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries made some headlines with this. Take a listen.
It's okay. There are no election deniers on our side of the aisle.
But in 2018, Jeffries wrote, "The more we learn about 2016 election, the more illegitimate it becomes. America deserves to know whether we have a fake president in the Oval Office." And then he doubled down in 2020. He posted to Trump, "Keep pouting. History will never accept you as a legitimate president." What changed?
Well, I think a lot of Democrats made mistakes in terms of complaining about the 2016 election. I remember vividly, I was on this network like a month after, and this issue came up. I said, he won the election. Let's get over it and stop talking about it. There's a lot of people in a lot of different places. I do find it interesting that Fox News is only concerned about Democratic election deniers. It seems like the Republicans took that whole thing a little bit more seriously in terms of storming the Capitol, in terms of doing all kinds of efforts to actually stop the election, as opposed to just issuing a couple of comments. So yeah, people will get emotional about elections. Nobody should try to stop an election from being certified. In fact, tomorrow, snow willing, we will be certifying President Trump's election. You will not see Democrats stand up and protest that. You will certainly not see them storm the United States Capitol to try and stop that certification. We accept the election of President Trump, and we will do our best to work with him going forward.
Well, I would argue that this network covered all sorts of election deniers across the spectrum.
That's true. Fox News did cover a lot of election deniers. The problem is that they didn't really cross-examine them very well. They didn't really question the facts behind their election denialism. In fact, they had to end up paying like a large sum of money because of their really bad coverage of election deniers. So I don't think that comeback from Jacqui Heinrich means what she was trying to say, or I don't know. I found that I laughed out loud when I heard her say that the first time, and it's still funny. And Adam Smith, I think, did a really good job of pushing back on the false equivalency of Democrats who talked about Russia collusion and different ways that that Trump's election had a lot of irregularities and election interference. I mean, that's actually what he's getting sentenced on Friday, is because he paid off Stormy Daniels so that the American public wouldn't find out about how he had an affair with Stormy Daniels at Lake Tahoe while his wife was home with their newborn baby, and the American people would have found out about that right after the Access Hollywood tape came out, and it was such a close election. Who knows? Maybe it would have all gone the other way because of the felonies that Trump committed that he's being sentenced for on Friday, which is where I started the program called Come Around Full Circle. I appreciate all of you who showed up to join me. Oh, I did promise a brief Cheech and Chong the Kittens clip before I finish up, and I do have 2 more Monday Media Mix-Ups before I stop doing these live streams. I'll probably make a video uploaded maybe Thursday or Friday of this week, a short video talking about the future of my YouTube channel when I'm not doing regularly scheduled weekly live streams. The other type of content I'll be making, sometimes some live streams, sometimes I could just talk about that Bill Hemmer dumbest clip of the day type thing, or make Fox News bias video. Anyway, I'll be talking about that probably in a video I'll be uploading later this week. But now I'm going to show you a chair battle between Chong on the top and Cheech trying to get to the top. This happens a lot, and I happen to capture this chair battle about 20 seconds before I say goodbye finally over here. And that's the program. I will be back for 2 more weeks, all the way through January 20th, which will be my last regularly scheduled Monday media mix-up, the end of 12 years of covering the Sunday shows, first on Sundays, then on Mondays. And I'll start doing a few different things. And like I said, I'll upload a video about that later this week, I'm pretty sure. Until then, or until next Monday, or whenever you come back to my YouTube channel, until I see you on my YouTube channel, I guess I'll just see you around the internet.